Welcome to the Vineyard Life podcast, a space where we have honest conversations on community, culture, and the kingdom of God. I'm Taylor Skidmore.
And I'm Brett McIntosh.
And we're so glad to have you join us. Welcome to another episode of the Vineyard Life podcast. We're joining you yet again for another exciting episode. I'm one of your hosts, Taylor Skidmore.
And I'm Brett McIntosh.
Nice. And we have a special guest with us today, Amy Wickstrom.
Welcome.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here. It's an honor to have you here. And we invited Amy. Something that's on my heart is to hear more about King's Academy as well as family stuff, family life, and things along that line. I wanted to start by saying that. So my son, Abe, 6 years old, goes to King's Academy, and he is so funny because it was, in the kind of in the heart of some of the pandemic stuff, everything's shut down, and he started going, and he came home and he was so excited because he had friends. This thing called friends, and like the first day,
Coronavirus.
Yeah. So I just want to start off by thanking you because it's been such a blessing to my own family and how much it's caused him to be more alive and feel more connected. So thank you just for spearheading King's Academy and going after what you're going after. So would you maybe start by telling us a story of how that came about?
How it came to pass?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I have homeschooled my own kids. I have 6 kids. The littlest is almost 2, and the oldest is in 6th grade. I have homeschooled them from the beginning. Part of that is because, well, actually all of it is because the Lord asked me to. That wasn't my ambition to be a homeschooling family. So I was doing it in obedience to Him. And I actually had been praying about the education of my kids when I just had 2 children and they were both preschoolers. I didn't care where my kids went to school, if it was public or private or homeschooling. I grew up in public school. I was in public school almost the whole time with exception to 2 years when I lived in England. I went to it was definitely not a Christian school, a very private American school. When I was in high school, but apart from that, I was in public school. So and the Lord actually met me there and ministered to me as a public school student in really mighty ways. So I have no critical bone in my body toward public school in that regard. And so I just wanted to know what the Lord wanted for my family. I didn't have a personal preference. I figured He knew my kids better than I did, and so He would have a plan for their education. And so I prayed for a few years for direction on what He wanted for their education. And as the Lord often is, when we pray for things, sometimes it's sudden and sometimes it's a long time. This one was a long time in coming, years past. And I was in a Bible study one morning and just had a very clear, heard from the Lord that I want you to homeschool your kids. I thought, fantastic. Now I have a sense of direction. Now I know what to do. And then I saw this image of these kids coming and going from my garage. I thought, what are those children doing in my garage, and who are they? That's the strangest thing, and what does this have to do with homeschooling? So I found a
So this was in prayer?
This was in prayer, and it was just a moment's thing. I was in a Bible study at my church at the time, and this image came to my head of my garage. I have a detached garage with these kids coming and going from it, and then I just heard in my spirit, I want you to homeschool your kids.
Wow.
So I had no idea what the garage thing was all about, but I pursued the homeschooling part of it, and I was freaked out by the homeschooling part of it. And so I found a Christian-based hybrid locally that was off Crown Valley. It's not there anymore, and enrolled my kids in preschool there. And they did great. They were happy, and they were thriving. Everything was going well until I got an email like 2 weeks before school was going to start and saying the school was closing. And I thought, I don't have a plan B. I know that the Lord wants me to homeschool, so now what do I do? I had become a good friend of my son's teacher, and so I text messaged her that night and said, did you get the email that you don't have a job and I don't have a school? And would you like to come?
Oh my gosh.
Would you like to come to my house and tutor my kids because I don't have a plan B? And she wrote right back and said, absolutely. And that's actually Carolina Umana, who's your son's was your son's teacher. Yeah, so
she's awesome.
She's awesome. And so then I texted a few other friends and said, hey, Miss Umana's coming to my house to tutor my kids. Do you want to come join us? Because there's no school anymore. And they said yes. And so I thought, well, I am still pregnant and having babies. I don't really want these kids in my house. And then what happens when the baby cries or I need a break or whatever? I'm going to feel like I'm walking on eggshells in my own house if I have a class in there. Mm-hmm. So I thought I'm just going to put them in the garage and we're going to make a makeshift class out there. I've got 2 weeks. So I grabbed some stuff. Carolina grabbed some stuff. And 2 weeks later, we had these kids coming and going from my garage, which I realized in that moment was actually the fulfillment of that image the Lord had put in my mind in prayer years before. So it was a surprise to me, but it was not a surprise to the Lord. It actually gave me a lot of peace because I felt like I knew that we were in the center of what God was doing. Mm-hmm. And that actually lasted for 4 years. My son called it Garage Academy. I tried so hard to get him to not call it that because there's no polish in that. But
there's no what?
There's no polish to that. I mean, it's like even my mom, his grandmother was like, can't you name it something else? And I said, it's like the kids won't stop calling it Garage Academy, so that's what it is.
So Kings is an upgrade for sure.
Oh, by a lot. Yeah. So that was 4 years. And then we grew. I kept having children. We made a preschool in the garage as well.
Wait, this was how many years ago?
This is
started
5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So it grew to, we had an elementary class in there, and then we also had a preschool class that was in there. The preschool is still here at my house. But the long and short of it is, it was growing, and I knew that it was either going to need to close because I can't fit, I had 2 children, now I have 6. I can't fit all of them in my garage with their friends and have that we are outgrowing it. So it was either going to need to close or relocate somewhere where it could grow. And so I had addressed Mike before COVID, Mike Hudgens, about the possibility of being at the church and just using some space for a very low-profile, grassroots, makeshift homeschool group. To which he had said yes, because they had the Vine here and was familiar with it. This wouldn't have been anything even like the Vine either. But so that was our plan. And then...
and the Vine was the school before, right?
Yeah, school
several years
here
back.
Many years ago, and it had a great run, and then it stopped for a few years.
Yeah. So then COVID happened, and I figured that was the end of that, and we were going to be back in my garage because there wasn't children's ministry here or anything. I didn't even bother asking Mike about anything because I thought, when there's no children's ministry, why would we be launching anything at the
Yeah.
So I just figured that the Lord would come up with another way of providing for my family. And so I went on vacation to Arizona on a camping trip in June with the rest of the state of California after COVID. And when we were there, Mike called and said, have you thought about those classes that you were thinking about doing? Do you still want to do those? And I said, gosh, it's June, and school starts in 2.5 months. I hadn't really thought about that since. I have kind of, but yes. And then he said, well, what do you think about actually starting a school? And I thought, wow, it's like June and school starts in 2.5 months. And I shared it with him that, again, my call for my own family was homeschooling. And so if I were to start any kind of school-like program, it would be a homeschool program. And but I said, let me finish my vacation out and pray about this, and you pray about it. When I get back into town, we'll meet and see if this is what the Lord wants us to do. So I didn't have to pray about it for very long before I very quickly knew that if there was ever a golden hour for homeschooling, that was it, and we're still in it.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I had tried a variety of different homeschool formats. I had done charter schools. I've done a lot of different things. So I'm very comfortable with it at this season. It took me years to get comfortable with it, but at this season I feel really comfortable with it. And so it was. I decided to do it, and Mike, more importantly, decided to do it. And so I sent off an email the second week of June to some friends with a makeshift Word document that said, what's your child's name and birthday, and sign here if you want to come to some classes that we're starting at the Vineyard, and we're going to call it King's Academy. And the church said we could have 3 combined classes with the option of a 4th depending on enrollment. So I sent that email off to some friends, and that email became 50 families overnight of people that wanted to come, that had never even seen our facility, that just knew they wanted a different option for their kids. And so we had 50 families with we quickly took the 4th class. They said you have an option of a 4th class depending on enrollment. So we took the 4th class, and that was full. And I said, oh my gosh, this has all gone so fast. We've got 50-something kids and no teachers. And it's like August. And so I sent John and Mike a text message saying, please pray that the heavens open and we can get teachers. And the Lord's always been so kind to us. He's been so he has his favor on this program, because we had more teachers than we could even hire 2 weeks later. And we started that program in first day of school with 4 classes. We had a wait list. We could have easily opened 6 classes that would have been full. We would have been able to do K through 5 with full classes in every one of those grade levels. So I went back to Mike and John in October and said, our wait list continues to grow. And these families, honestly, the intention isn't so much to grow. That actually hasn't ever been the intention. That the intention is to meet the needs of the families that have come to us, and recognizing that there's actually a very true felt need in our community for education, and that it's a very concrete, tangible way that the church is able to provide a ministry. And so I went back to Mike and John and said, we've got a lot of families that want to come here. Can we open up more classes in January? All of our combined classes, can we split them into single grade level classes in January at the start of the next semester? And they said yes. So we doubled in size in January, and all of our split level classes became, all of our combined classes, we split them into single grade level classes. And then we added 7th grade. So the 5-6 combo became a 6-7 combo, which is what it is now. And then next fall, we'll have another growth spurt, and we'll add an incoming kinder class. And then we'll add that combined class in junior high will split into, it'll be a 7th grade class and an 8th grade class. So we have, well, I've talking a long time. Over to you.
Well, so let me just say back to you what you said. So to summarize what you said that you started a homeschool basically in 2 weeks. Started
I hadn't thought about it that way until you just said that, but
in 2 months.
Yeah, so there's a working of 2s, huh?
Dude, that's a lot. And then at the split of the year, that doubled. That's a lot of growth.
Yeah, it
is.
is.
I mean, that's just a lot to do in a short amount of time. That's amazing. Because a year ago from now, this wasn't a school.
Not even on the radar.
That's amazing. So you, and right now, roughly how many students are in the school?
100.
100. That's amazing.
Next fall, it'll be 138.
Wow.
That's like this coming fall in a few months. Wow.
Yeah. That's so cool. So how do you juggle? I have to ask this, and I want to hear more about King's Academy, but I have to ask, how do you juggle, being a mom of 6 kids and running this starting school?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, how do I do that is only because I know that I'm doing what the Lord's asked me particularly to do. And so with the call comes the equipping for it. And I know deeply in my spirit that He's asked me to do this. And so I go into it with the belief that He will help me do it, not at the expense of my family, but at the benefit of my family. Wow. And
wow,
that's so good.
So it has been hard.
That's a totally different mindset. To go in it as the benefit of your family instead of as the expense of your family.
Yes. And, with every family, you have children that have all different needs and all different learning styles and all different social dynamics. Some are extroverts, some are introverts. They have all different needs. So when my family's gone through this transition and also changing schools, because 3 of my children are there. Next year I'll have 4 of my children there. When there have been challenges for my own family with change, I have some kids that manage change really well, and then I have some children that don't manage change well at all. And so I go into it expecting some of those challenges, but I also go into it expecting for God to provide, because that's who He is as our Father.
Wow.
And if He's called me to do this, then He has a call on their lives too, and it's a good call. And so if there's difficulties, which there always will be, and I've had for my own family this year, I lobby those with my husband in prayer, and He hears. So
That's so cool.
yeah, I would say you don't ever, as a general rule of thumb, I learned this when I was dating in high school and college. I discovered that my choices weren't always God's choices, and my choices didn't turn out as well as God's choices do. And so I would much rather go with what God chooses for me. If He could just let me know, then I'll be obedient and do it. And it usually,
So you were just intentional that way.
very intentional
For
about
pressing into His choices versus.
yes, my choices don't turn out very well, and His turn out really well, and not always in the short term. It's not like I'm saying there's not suffering and hardship. There often is, but they turn out well. There's gold in them, and so so I feel like with these things, I would never be like, oh, I want to start a school. That would be like kind of my choice, oh, I want to have 6 kids. That wasn't my choice either. The Lord prompted those things, and the Lord made it clear to me over lengths of time of what He wanted me to do in different seasons of my life. And so I have just followed Him with that, and then expected that it will go well because of who I've chosen to believe He is. So,
Wow. This is awesome. So I'm thinking back to some of the stuff too that you said earlier, that you in that mix of being a mom, that you had been either pregnant or nursing for 13 years. And it's so funny because just this last week, my wife and I had the same conversation. We have 5 kids, and she's like, oh my gosh, I've been pregnant or nursing for, if you put all the years together, for 10 years, it's spread out, but still for 10 years of my life, she was just saying that. And that's amazing that you have, I know I keep using that word, but just that you are doing both of those, and that mindset of being able to see it as something that is going to bless your family and empower your family like that. That's just really cool.
So I would want to say this to anybody who would look at me and have, because I'll have people say, how do you do 6 kids and this and that? And I would say my life, so my background is in counseling. I was a child and family therapist for about 12 years in private practice before I had my children, and then just spent a lot of time in my career, and then was very excited to have kids when that time was right, and so happily left my career for when I had my first baby. The Lord then brought me back into it a little bit, and then He graciously brought me back out of it again. But I would say that most of the last, so my eldest is 12, and I would say the last 6 years of my life have been very quiet, in the sense that I haven't done anything related to my career. The Lord very purposefully pulled me out of everything apart from my family.
He has a habit of doing that.
He has a habit of doing that. And so I remember the day I graduated with my PhD, one of the people that was my chair looked at me and she said, Amy, I was in a real niche of like play therapy. I was in a very narrow niche of that. And she said to me, Amy, you've got your career on a silver platter. You've got your research is, it's published. You're, not even 30 years old. You've got a private practice that you've done 3 times. Like the world's like your oyster, right? Mm-hmm. And I laughed because I was pregnant and I with my first, and I just wanted to kind of take a break from all of it. And so I did, but you don't realize how much of your identity is in the things that you do until some of those things are gone. And so for anybody that would compare me to, I would say the last few years have actually been a very refining process where the Lord has asked me to let go of pretty much anything that I would have identified myself with. And that was a very good cleansing. I didn't realize that there were areas of pride in my life with some of the things that I had done. And I'm so grateful to God in his loving eye for us as people that he will remove those things so that you can have your identity rooted in who he has you be and not anything that you're affiliated with. Even good things, even helping people things, even ministry things, King's Academy things, to where you want to be able to say, Lord, if you ask me to leave all of whatever you've equipped me to do tomorrow and go live in a hole where no one knows my name, I delight in that because my identity is not in what I do, but in who I am.
Come on. That's so good.
So for the mothers, I've had a handful of people say, how do you do 6 kids? And I would say, well, no one's actually seen me for the last 6 years of my life. No one has. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
It's because I've been with my family and I've had every bit of a hard day as much as everyone. I've yelled at my kids. I've said bad things. I've been everything that I.
No, I'm just kidding.
I've done it all.
Yeah.
I have. We all have, right? And so I'm no different. I can tell you. I remember my husband saying to me at one point, I don't even remember what it was. Something with our kids, and he's like, "You've got a PhD in this. Don't you know how to fix it?" Oh. And he wasn't trying to be mean about it at all. But I just said, that really doesn't even matter at this point. I can't even think clearly. I just, you're just human. So all that is so it's so good because it's humbling and all of that. So
it's real.
It's real, and yes, and so how do I do this with 6 kids? Only because the Lord asked me to have all 6 of those children, every one of them by name, and so He's gonna meet me there. And my pregnancies were very hard. I had very hard pregnancies. None of that was a cakewalk. I often found myself thinking, how, Lord, am I going to have another child when my plate is beyond full and I am not made any differently than anybody else with how hard it is to have small children in your house? Homeschooling too? Are you nuts? It's like nuts. But it's I just think the goal in life is to hear the voice of the Father in your life and then to be obedient to that and to expect great things. And so there's been many years of challenge and many years of living a quiet life, not knowing if the Lord would ever use me for anything outside of mothering my children and being okay with that. And I have asked Him for opportunities to allow me to lead again. Because I would like to be able to do that, but recognizing that if He chooses not to, that I'm happy with whatever His choice is. And so when...
what do you mean by about leading?
Leading anything, and being outside of my house, outside of... I like to just lead, I led my practice, I would lead... Just being a leader in any capacity, anything you step into, yeah. And he had. So I was just waiting for him, not for any person to ask me for something, because we can be asked from a person, "Hey, will you do this or do that?" And sometimes that is the Lord's voice, but it absolutely is the Lord's voice. But I felt like for me, I wanted to just wait and hear from Him on when He would have me re-enter society. And so He had me re-enter society a year ago. And so He had me...
When everyone else was coming out of society.
Exactly. Pretty much.
That's
He
pretty
did.
Funny.
Yeah. And so I knew it was His voice. I knew that was... He had been prompting me for that for quite some time now. In retrospect, I can see how these pieces fit together. I wouldn't have seen that at the time, but I do see that now. And so... So I know that this is what He's asked me to do, and so I'm doing it. And I've loved it. I've absolutely loved it, and it has been very challenging navigating it, mothering with my kids too. But He's as He did with the pregnancies or anything in life that he calls you to do, because everybody's, navigating their own call. He's met me there, and he has helped. And so there's definitely things I've had to adjust along the way. There have been points where I've said I'm carrying too much. I need to actually switch gears. My husband and I have been married 20 years, and he's
congratulations. That's awesome.
a great. We're a good team, and so he's holds me accountable and shepherds and can see when I need to regroup and do that for our family too. And so he has called me out on that a few times, and we've regrouped. So we're in it for the long haul, for however long the Lord has it.
Yeah, that's cool.
It must have been a huge transition for your family, for your kind of small baseball team of a family, to go from homeschooling into this whole sphere with all the students now. I was homeschooled up until 5th grade.
Oh.
And so, but then coming out of that, it was nice to be in the public school because the dating scene isn't the best in homeschool and all that. So it was fun. It was a good transition for me. But yeah, how has that been for your children? Are a lot of them involved in King's Academy?
3 of them are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how has that been for them? Because I know your time must have just shifted so much in all this.
Yeah. I used to work at night. So when I was in counseling, I would work at night. My husband would come home from work, and then I would go to the office. So I never had a nanny. I would be with them during the day, and then he would be with them when I would go to work. So I expected to do the same thing with this. So I was working a lot at nights, but I was burning the candle at both ends. And so people were getting emails from me at midnight, and I need my sleep. So, and we don't hear sleep. So, my kids, the question was, how has that been for my kids? They saw me work a lot, more than I would have wanted them to. That's the honest answer to it. But we regrouped, and Matt and I spent some time trying to figure out how we can structure this differently. And so I have this little preschool at my house that's the same hours as King's Academy. So I have 2 of my kids are at that preschool, while 3 of my kids are here. So I just have the baby. And what I would do is I would put her down for her nap, and then I would come here to the school, and then I would have a babysitter that'll get her from the nap and babysit her and the other 2 when they get out of preschool for like 2 or 3 hours. And then I'll go home with my other 3 kids and take 3 of mine home to where the other 3 are. Wow. So that's how it's worked this year. Yeah. But, families are always changing. Brent, knows 5 kids. They're always changing. So I don't know what that'll look like next year. Next year will be a different schedule and routine. And I'll have 4 kids here, and the baby will be in the preschool there. I'm going to send her there too. Play with Play-Doh. So, nice. So it'll be a different schedule.
So you and Matt have been married 20 years. Mm-hmm. You have 6 kids. Mm-hmm. You have a PhD in marriage and family, and you have this history of having been a therapist for many years. And I know that we touched base on something like that with the family and how that connects in with your personal family. Are there pieces in there that you bring from some of those other worlds to King's Academy?
From the counseling?
Either from the counseling or like from your PhD in family. Are there pieces in there that?
Yeah. So one of the things that I loved to do was actually program development. So in counseling, there's this family therapy model called filial therapy, where you're basically teaching parents how to interact with their kids and be the primary person that is helping create change with their child instead of you. So I had a lot of fun with that model. That was a lot of what I did. And but I love program development, and I love seeing something and then tinkering with it, experimenting with it, and changing it to just. I just like changing things. I'll take this. I'm going to move it. I'm going to tweak it a little bit and try this. So, and I love research. I love doing research. I love writing research. I'm like I have a real inner nerd in me with I could sit I used to joke with my husband, I could be by myself for 2 days writing, and I wouldn't even notice I'm by myself until awesome. Someone would say, "Where is she?" So those things strangely, I actually feel like that has fed into King's Academy because I love program development. I could sit at my computer happily and create King's Academy, all of those handbooks, all of the just there's so much programmatic stuff in there that that I have actually kind of enjoyed writing, which I don't think most people would like that kind of thing, but I like that kind of thing. And then coming up with the idea of what a program will look like, all the program development, I really enjoy that. I love that. I love taking an idea and then putting a structure around it. So those things have, and then I think counseling skills lend themselves to everything. And so I actually haven't been able to use the counseling as much as I would have wanted to because I have 6 children, and I feel like I am not able to just be at the school all the time working with kids. I'm also I'm doing all the developing the program and such that there have been times where I wished I could have interfaced with children more. But I recognize that I'm not able to because I need to go home. I need to do different things, and so
you're a human.
Those are my limitations. Yeah,
human.
Yeah, and it's a different role. Overseeing a school is a very different role than counseling is, but there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, unless you have another question, Taylor, I wanted to ask at some point if you would. Maybe just as we're sitting here and listening to talk in this direction, I'm thinking, either you just have such an anointing in these areas, there's such a gift in these areas and authority in these areas, and I was thinking either something along the lines of if you have any words for maybe homeschool parents or parents that that would either be an encouragement to them or maybe even a prayer of blessing over them or unless you had.
That's great.
Okay, so
Brent homeschools all 5 of your children. I would love to turn that over to you because you've actually been doing this longer than I have.
I think he wants you to pray for him.
So I'm going to have you pray for us. No, but I mean, honestly, you should invite you just to speak to that on homeschooling. You have been at it longer than me. Your oldest is actually graduated from college and married. Yeah.
So what's the question that I asked? I'm just, it's tricky sometimes. Like as I'm hearing you go through the different juggle of the different stuff, I'm flashing through the juggle of, that's right. Especially when they're younger, trying to process through, how do we do this and how do we do this? And I have another friend of mine that has 4 young kids, and he just had his 4th, and I'm realizing, we're trying to connect up again, and it's getting more and more difficult just to do, just in that season. There's a season there, like you said, those 6 years, those younger years where it's a lot harder, and then you have kids that are getting older, and they help out with some of the younger ones. But it's a juggle, and just continuing to press into the Lord's grace in that place. But he meets us. He meets us every step along the way, and just like your story of how his choices and how he had this plan, I feel like he's done that in my life again and again, where it gets difficult. And there's been times where, as a father, I feel like I don't know if I'm gonna make it. Like I don't know if I can do all of this. And then something will shift, and there'll be a grace pocket, a grace moment where he'll open something up. And sometimes it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in my timing, but he's always there with us, leading us, guiding us, bringing comfort, bringing his provision, and it's always enough. So good. But I do want to hear if you have any kind of even just a prayer of blessing over, maybe over moms, over dads that are really contemplating in this area of like any kind of encouragement that maybe would, help them with where they're at, because there is so much that goes on. And even if we just finish with just a prayer of blessing or anything that any last words that stand out to you? I don't, not like last words, but you know.
Homeschooling is it was trendy before COVID. You know, it was, at least in our area, there were so many people that were homeschooling. You know, in our generation, homeschooling wasn't like trendy. You know, you went to public or private, and most people went to public. And
they were weird if they were homeschooled.
Right, totally, very weird. Yes, and so.
Whoa.
Well,
I mean,
except for this guy. Yeah.
Completely normal.
I'm a little older than you, though. So.
I know. Yeah.
But it was trendy before COVID. There, you know, everyone knew somebody who was homeschooled before. But now, now most of the planet is homeschooled, whether they wanted to or not. That was part of what came with COVID. But I would say for the homeschoolers, you know, we so welcome you here that all are welcome to be at this table. And it's filled with like really good things. It's not meant to be done alone. Most families I know don't homeschool on their own. They are plugged into homeschooling groups and communities. You need that, and your kids need that. And but this is a place where you can actually get your kids a very good education, a very, very strong education. Homeschool kids tend to outperform on academic performance, both their public and private counterparts. They've been at the top of the list in terms of school performance for years. So there's no concerns there to people who are new to homeschooling. But you'll find that you can have the best of both worlds. This program, King's Academy, was created with families that are new to homeschooling in mind. It was created for the people that typically haven't homeschooled. Most of our families fit that bill. We have a few that have homeschooled for a long time, Brent being one of them. And some of our families were in homeschool groups that naturally just closed independently of COVID. And so we've welcomed them here. We've loved that. But most of our families are new to it. And so our intention, I feel like the Lord's intention in King's Academy was to give a welcome to these families that COVID wasn't what they were expecting for the way that it changed their child's education. But the Lord knew absolutely what he was doing. And this was his divine rearrangement for their family's lifestyle of education. And he has really good things for them and in mind. And I think that they're probably going to look back and say, that was a really bad season in a lot of ways, but that was actually one of the most pivotal things that has changed for our family, was how the Lord regrafted us from this into that. And I'm so grateful that he did, and it wouldn't have happened possibly without COVID. And so to all those families, I just would extend the warmest welcome into what I think will be a lifestyle of education that will change the framework of your family, and that's all. Yeah. So blessings. That wasn't a prayer, but that is
it was a blessing. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Amy, for joining us and for your heart. It's just, I mean, I know you already feel this, but it's just so backed by the whole church, like from Mike to what's shared. It's just such a positive addition and like core part of who we are as a church now. And so it's been beautiful to see. I just keep talking to so many people who have been blessed by having their children there and by everything you carry, and have now blessed all the teachers and now the students and families with. I know several of the teachers in there, and they're just incredible people. And so we just honor you and thank you for everything you've been doing with King's Academy. So, well, thank you for joining us for another episode of Vineyard Life. And we hope that you'll see us again next week. So hope you have a good rest of the day. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Vineyard Life.
If you'd like to learn more about this episode, take a look at the show notes and feel free to leave us a comment. Click subscribe or follow us if you'd like to hear more on community, culture, and the kingdom of God.